And I think we'd been actually doing pretty good on this kind of stuff in terms of being pretty close to being on time. Randy Hall says Todd Hartley getting a big ratio. We'll address that here coming up in a little bit too. This is the thing to me in sports that probably is one of the most obvious things, right? It's like obviously coaches, athletes that we pay attention to, in a lot of cases, they earn really big salaries, right? And so I think sometimes, you want to go back many decades ago, maybe like, I can't believe, you get paid $700,000 for coaching football or whatever the number is. But I think the thing we've kind of gravitated towards now is that when you are doing your job well, there's almost no question asked about the amount of money you get paid. You see this in professional sports all the time too. So-and-so major leaguer, as long as this guy's hitting the ball in the ballpark, obviously whatever he's paid is seemingly no problem for anybody. When you start getting into, I can't believe so-and-so makes however much money he makes, that's when that guy is underperforming. But in the case of a guy like Hartley, this is exactly, I think most of us would say life is supposed to work. When you perform really well, when you exceed the expectations for your job, obviously you should get a financial reward on the other side of that, both in terms of on-field results for the tight ends, current off-field results when it comes to the kinds of tight ends that George is recruiting and pursuing from a recruiting standpoint. Clearly, it is impossible for someone to do better as a tight ends coach than what Todd Hartley is doing right now. So, of course, it just stands to reason he should be paid higher than any other tight end coach in the country because of the work that he's doing, and that's kind of the way that works out. We'll obviously do more on that in the show here in just a bit. Hemingway, I was just giving you a hard time. I appreciate that. Diedrich Frazier says, Georgia's Death Star recruiting machine is at full power, and that is making it difficult for Billy Napier to find his footing on the recruiting trail. And I agree with that. And here's the thing that we tried to say to Florida fans when Napier was hired, is that there is a chance that Napier turns out to be a really good coach. Oftentimes, the group of five guy that's rising his way up the ranks really is a star on the rise, and eventually that comes to fruition. But the thing that we said, and by the way, welcome into all of our platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Good morning to all of you here on this summer Friday. Hope you're having a great day, moving into a Father's Day weekend, of course. But the point we made to Florida fans when Napier was hired was, man, on the heels of unsuccessful coaches, long string of them here, and the last two of those unsuccessful coaches really coming at the hands of just not being able to recruit enough elite talent, it was a surprise to me that Florida rolled the dice on a group of five coach. It just was. Now, Napier's doing some things from an organizational standpoint, from a structural infrastructure standpoint, better than what Dan Mullen was doing. They've got a bigger recruiting staff. They are mirroring some of the things that seemingly have worked for other SEC programs. So at least in terms of the steps that are being taken, Napier looks like a step forward for Florida compared to what Mullen was before that. Just kind of a really just sort of a wimpy staff, to be honest with you. But it was still a risk to bring in a group of five coach. And what you're seeing right now is that, as our commenter mentioned, I believe it was Diedrich Frazier, as our commenter mentioned, that just developing any momentum to speak of whatsoever is just not an easy thing to do. We're going to get into it a little bit later on with a quarterback recruit that Florida thought was going to be their guy, and they thought it was going to happen this weekend. At least for now it's not. It's just another example of, much the same way that people used to joke that, Dan Mullen brought Mississippi State to Florida. He was making them the Mississippi State of the SEC East. In a lot of ways, Billy Napier is bringing sort of a Sun Belt sensibility to Florida right now, too, and you can't help but notice that. Let's take a couple more comments. We'll get ready to get started with the regular show after that. Dogs Only says when the coaches are doing a great job and work together as a team with the players, it's important to keep them, paid well for consistency. Dogs Only, I think you're absolutely right on that. And I've said this now for a million years because it used to be facilities. Everybody wanted big facilities. Listen, I got no problem with facilities. I don't. But I've never really believed there was a straight line between commercial real estate, which is essentially what a facility is, between commercial real estate and on-field success. That to me, if I was in charge of the money, the way I'd want the money to be used is on people. Anybody who's ever run a business understands this, that if you have good people in your organization, you eventually can have the best organization possible, and you can build as nice a building as you want to after that, but it's all about having good people, retaining good people, and that's what the money really is supposed to be used for. So when you think about the thing that makes Georgia, the ability to pay an assistant coach whatever you want to pay him, so therefore Hartley's not looking to go be offensive coordinator at blah, blah, blah state or something like that, because why would he leave Georgia when he's getting paid very well for a young man here in kind of the early stages of his coaching career? And he's obviously having great success bringing in the kinds of players that most guys in his position would only dream of being able to bring in. But when you've got the luxury to be able to pay those guys that kind of money, you really are showing off your strength as a program more so than anything else. I mean, Georgia can pay Kirby $8 gazillion, and I don't think any of us would bat an eye, but it's the ability to also pay those assistant coaches large sums of money, keep them in place, maintain as much consistency as you can. And listen, even with that, there are still upwardly mobile people who are going to be looking to move on. You can't hold people prisoner, of course, but when it comes to a young guy who's looking to take that next step in his career financially, to be able to say, we can give that to you here, you don't have to go somewhere else to get that, I'd say that's a pretty good thing. I do. A couple of more, and then we're gone. Or not gone, but starting the show. Cat Story says, happy Father's Day week, NBA, and to all the fathers out there, go Dogs. Thank you so much for that, Cat. I love it when Father's Day is U.S. Open Sunday. It is literally one of the great days of the year because I really don't ask for much for Father's Day. I've for the most part got everything that I want, but it is one of those days where you can sort of leverage the, it is Father's Day. It'd be kind of cool if I could watch this golf here for a few minutes. It's one of those days when you can kind of at least leverage that. Like, I would have to say that probably the only thing I want for Father's Day is just to be able to sit down and watch the U.S. Open in kind of an uninterrupted fashion. So I am looking forward to that. A little cold air conditioning and being inside and enjoying all that. And Kat, thanks for bringing that up. Brad Hott will give you the final comment and we'll get started here. He says, I think Kirby and the gang are doing a flanking maneuver on Bama. Sign a number one guy in their state. You can come to Georgia, but you better watch your backyard. Yeah, I mean, and we'll do more of this with Jeff, and I'll give Connor some credit because he brought this up last night when we went live on a little bit of a breaking news deal with A.J. Harris making the commit to Georgia. The Dogs are making better inroads in the state of Alabama than maybe at one point in time you'd have thought was possible. Like, do you remember, I was thinking about this briefly last night. You remember the class of 2016? Like, there were two linebackers from Alabama that Georgia was kind of trying to get involved with late because of Kirby. One of them was Ben Davis, and the other was, and I don't know why I'm blanking on who that was, but it was an example of, hey, back then, a pipe dream that you could even get involved in any player that Alabama might want or Auburn, maybe in the state of Alabama might want. And obviously that's changed to a great deal right now that Georgia sort of swoops in and getting Harris and going to be involved in some of those other players, Rousseau and Smith and some of those guys there too. So it is an example of how Georgia has grown from a recruiting standpoint, that it's actually able to, Alabama has battled Georgia on its turf for a long time because if you're in Alabama, you have to recruit Georgia. See, this is the difference, is that other border states, Auburn, Bama, Clemson, South Carolina, Florida State, those border programs, they have to recruit in Georgia because of the population of Georgia, the level of talent that exists here. They have to do that. So Alabama's always going to be trying to encroach on Georgia's turf because if it doesn't have enough for an elite class. Georgia doesn't have to recruit Alabama, conversely, but it wants to, and it is doing so much better. Now, in the case of Harris, I guess he's like right there. Phoenix City's like right there on the border. I guess maybe he even lives in Columbus, maybe. So, and that's not exactly always been friendly turf to Georgia either. So, from a geographic standpoint, kind of an example, Phoenix City's almost in the state of Georgia as it is. That's where he's going to be going to high school. But the point still stands when you think about Quay Rousseau and guys like that Georgia is more involved in the state of Alabama than maybe it's ever been in the past. All right, we'll get ready to go here. Good to have all of you with us. Jeff Sentel coming up. That's going to be fun. We'll do a little bit on the Hartley situation today. A lot on recruiting, including what's going to be going down here this weekend. Boy, it's fun. There's a lot going on here, and we'll have fun with all of it. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. It's presented by Kroger, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
I begin today by telling you what you already know. It is great to be a Gator hater every single day of the year, but there are some days when it is just a little sweeter than others, and this is an example of that, because the more things seem to change, the more they seem to stay the same when it comes to Georgia just absolutely kicking Florida around all over the place. Another example of that yesterday, as five-star cornerback A.J. Harris commits to Georgia over Florida and a host of others, but this was really seemingly a Georgia-Florida battle head-to-head that Georgia won. You'll remember actually on yesterday's show, we talked about Harris. And what we said at the time is that it was probably the most dramatic moment of the 2023 recruiting class thus far. In that cycle, 23 cycles, what I mean to say. Probably the most dramatic moment of the 2023 recruiting cycle thus far, in that Harris was supposed to visit Florida this weekend. And this was supposed to be the Florida chance for the big pitch in the official visit to really go ahead and seal the deal for Florida with a player they had been pursuing for quite some time. You'll remember if you heard yesterday's show, we talked about this. And what we said was, hey, there was a lot of growing chatter on the internet that Florida visit wasn't taking place. We'll talk to Jeff more about this later on, but it certainly seemed like that Georgia was doing everything it could to convince Harris. He didn't need to go see Florida in Gainesville. We joked in yesterday's show. Never a hard thing to convince us that a trip to Gainesville is not worth your time, but maybe if you're a recruit and you're a younger person, you're trying to make sense of the world, maybe he did, hey, maybe I want to go see what they've got in store for me. Certainly Florida was working to get him on campus, because if you could get him on campus, you could kind of drown out some of that visit high that may have existed from when he recently stopped by to see the University of Georgia. But ultimately, not only did Georgia convince Harris not to take the Florida visit, Georgia was also able to convince Harris that now is the time to be a part of this class here for UGA. So the five-star cornerback is in the fold, highest-rated member now of the 2023 class. Yeah, there you see that. I love this from A.J. Harris, who says, I'm going to forever live with my name when I die. I'm going to stack up that money forever and ever. How many zeros is that? Is that 100,000%? Wow, 100,000% locked in and committed. I'm home. You love to see that, and also a great look at that arch-style throne that Georgia's put together right there. I think that's a good-looking thing. It's a great-looking edit. That's one of the sharper ones I've seen there in quite some time. I love the national championship trophy, doubled up to kind of flank that on both sides there, kind of the mirror image. Just a great look there from A.J. Harris. And I don't think you can fully appreciate the win here for Harris without fully appreciating the backstory that gets us to this, and the way in which Kirby Smart has once again sort of, dunked Florida's head under the water here when it comes to a major recruit. And to fully appreciate this, let's go all the way back to last fall, when Georgia had beaten Florida once again, and the talent mismatch on display there, seemingly a big reason why. This is at the time when then Florida coach Dan Mullen was going around talking about how he was getting pressed for why he didn't have better players. And, this is when he kind of dropped the line about, hey, we'll worry about that in come recruiting season. One of those phrases that just sort of hung in the air and you knew was going to be a dark cloud over Mullen for the rest of his tenure. And it turns out that tenure wasn't very long. But conversely, when Kirby Smart was asked about the role that talent and recruiting wins play and beating up on Florida year after year after year and the other big wins that Georgia is enjoying, Kirby Smart never holds back on this in terms of laying out just how important that is. So to understand what it means for Georgia to beat Florida for another elite recruit, let's go back and hear Kirby on the subject of recruiting after Georgia beat Florida on the field again last fall. This was Kirby back then.
Well, you have to. I mean, guys, if you don't recruit, there's no coach out there that can out-coach recruiting. Okay? I don't care who you are. The best coach to ever play the game better be a good recruiter, because no coaching is going to out-coach players. I mean, anybody will tell you our defense is good because they got good players. So spending time on the phone, spending time with people at your house, spending time with people when they come to your campus. I'm not with my family when I'm doing that. My family sacrifices so that I can go and spend time with other people's families so that we have good players. So, that's 25% evaluation. That's 50% recruiting, and another 25% is going to be coaching. But if you don't recruit, guys, you got no chance. Just go look. Look at the best teams out there. They got good football players. And that's the reason I believe in recruiting, and I believe you better always be recruiting. Always be recruiting, because if you're not, somebody else is.
That was Smart in Jacksonville last year, pointing to recruiting for why Georgia's beating Florida on the field, and that's the context for Georgia beating Florida again for another elite commit, in this case, 5-star cornerback A.J. Harris out of Phoenix City, Alabama. Now, let me give you one kind of quick aside here for a moment. I'm going to get back to the main topic at hand. If I was Kirby Smart, I don't know that I would be able to say what he says right there. And this is one of those things I don't think we should lose sight of, that it would be human nature for Smart, who always hears about, well, you're a good recruiter, but what happens to those players once they get to Georgia? Like, when you're always hearing about that kind of thing, I think it'd be very easy to become somewhat defensive about that and say, hey, I'm coaching these guys up. Look at my results as a coach. Look at what I'm doing. It's not all about recruiting. This is about me as a coach. I have to admit that if I was in Smart's position, my ego might take over, and my words might be led by my ego. I'm not proud to say that, but it's probably, to a certain extent, probably true. The fact that Smart, who has been kind of backhanded complimented as he's a recruiter and nothing else, the fact that he doesn't shy away from admitting and acknowledging the importance of recruiting, he kind of leans into his brand there a bit, I think speaks to him as a leader, that he's not one of these guys that's going to be overtaken by ego or driven by that he is going to keep working and grinding, and he's going to be burning the candle at both ends to make sure that Georgia has the best possible players, even players that a lot of folks in the industry thought were definitely going to go to the University of Florida. If you're watching on video, I'll put a finer point on this for a moment. If you're not, I'll describe this to you. There's a guy named Hayes Fawcett, and Hayes, I don't know him personally. He's a young guy, I believe. Incredibly talented when it comes to creating the kinds of edits that recruits like to share when it comes to making their announcements or making their finalists, things like that. It's good to have a niche in life. You have a personal brand, it gives you a chance to stand out in the crowd. And Fawcett clearly has that when it comes to creating these edits. Well, last night on social media, some of y'all shared this with me. I think this is amazing, and it just speaks to the level of disappointment that exists in Gainesville today because of the commitment of Harris. Can we show this on the screen here from Hayes Fawcett? So NC Dog 4 shared this with me. And so Fawcett put this out there. And if you're not listening, or I should say, if you're not watching on video, I'll try to describe this to you. So Fawcett's caption on this image is, sorry, Florida fans, this edit had been in the vault since April. And I worked too hard not to put it out there. It is beautiful. I mean, it is a thing of beauty. With Harris wearing kind of the old school, almost like starter style jacket in the middle there, doing the gator chomp up top. For whatever reason, there appear to be a couple of flying shoes in this edit too, which I think is really funny. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but that's kind of funny there on that. But here's the very talented edit creator holding on to the A.J. Harris to Florida edit all the way back since April. That is how much of a gut punch Georgia gave Florida there yesterday. Now, I'm not making fun of Hayes on this because I think he's a terrific artist and great at what he does. But, boy, it's pretty easy to make fun of Florida on that. That's how in the bag they thought Harris was, and that is the kind of recruiting win that Georgia went out there and got. And the timing on this is not lost on us either, because this comes at a time in which Florida is also trying to impress upon other recruits that Billy Napier's building something, that this is the place they want to be. But when a guy they were sure they were getting is just like that on the drop of a hat, choosing to go to Georgia, my gosh, how do you even sell that as a message when Georgia's taking the players that that you thought were going to be in the fold there for quite some time? We even kind of had some fun with this a little bit yesterday, too. It's like a lot of Florida fans were so excited about getting Janelle Aguero, the 5-star safety, in the midweek official visit. And they love some of the stuff that Aguero was saying on social media. We sort of laughed this off yesterday, saying, listen, you're going to give the guy some free meals and give him a nice place to stay and take good care of him. The least he can do is give you a good Yelp review. The least he can do is give you a good, social media review. And Aguero put this out on Twitter yesterday, too, of a guy that had just visited Georgia, went to Florida. Can we show Janelle Aguero here, please? Coach Napier is building something great at Florida. We said on yesterday's show that this doesn't mean anything. It's not the kind of thing that stands out to us as significant in any way. But to think that Florida fans trying to buy into that message with Aguero on campus, at the same time a fellow defensive back like A.J. Harris is making the commitment to Georgia, it just sort of speaks to how difficult Florida under Billy Napier has found it to build anything because of the behemoth that exists for the University of Georgia. And listen, if you're a Georgia fan, you've kind of gotten used to this over the years, and you never get really tired of it, but you've gotten used to major recruiting wins. They come and they continue to seemingly flourish year after year after year. But for me and a lot of us around here, some of them are just a little more sweet than others. And anytime you get to go out against your hated rival, the rival we believe is Georgia's number one rival, anytime you're able to go out there and take a player from the Gators, especially one they really thought they were going to get, that makes it even better. What a great way to start the weekend. Georgia getting over Florida in a big way and adding a major member here to this 2023 class. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans presented by Kroger. Good to have you a part of the program today. A lot of platforms, however you get to us. Video starting at 9:45, first and 15, DawgNation.com, and the DawgNation app. 10 a.m. on video after that, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, on the radio at noon. On Athens Sports Radio, 960 The Ref, and as a podcast, Apple, Spotify, everything else. A lot of different ways for you to get a part of the program. We're glad to have you with us as we do it here today. A lot of news to get to related to Georgia. We'll cover throughout the program. A lot of it recruiting stuff, too. We'll do more of that here in just a moment. Before that, though, let me remind you of my great friends at Kroger. Let me also remind you about a big event you got coming up here in the Atlanta area that Kroger's a big part of and wants to give you a chance to be a big winner when it comes to that there as well. How about the big race weekend sweepstakes courtesy of our friends at Kroger? They bring the show to you today, and they're bringing this great contest opportunity to you there as well. You're going to be having 10 first prize winners who are going to receive 2 tickets to the Cup race there in Atlanta on July 10th. Now, all you got to do is enter now for your chance to win. The website to go to is racingprizes.com/Atlanta. That's racingprizes.com/Atlanta. And you could potentially be a big winner of, what do we say, 10 first prize winners. Going to be getting a pair of tickets there for the big race. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really happy to have 2 races back in Atlanta again. I think that's kind of cool. And I think it's really cool that Kroger's doing this giveaway there as well. So make sure you check that out as we head towards the big event. Get involved right now while you have a chance to do just that. All right, I told you before, a lot of recruiting on today's show. That's Jeff Sentel coming up in a moment. We'll go around, we'll go on the road, assisted by AAA with Jeff Sentel here in a moment. We're going to go around the doghouse, though, right now. I'm going to step away from recruiting here for a moment because yesterday there was also other big news as it relates to Georgia. Connor Riley had this for us at DawgNation.com. UGA tight ends coach Todd Hartley getting himself a big raise. I think it's up to $650,000, I believe the number is. That's going to make him the highest paid tight end coach, essentially highest paid tight end coach in the entire country. And I don't think there's any Georgia fan who would say anything other. This is well deserved for him. It has really been remarkable the way in which Hartley has raised the profile of the tight end position there at Georgia. This has gone from being, maybe in other years, what you sort of think of as kind of an afterthought type position in a lot of programs, to now this is really a glamour position at UGA. The success that Brock Bowers had last year, one of the best players in the entire country, really one of the faces of the Georgia program for the upcoming year, the energy and excitement that exists around a guy like Eric Gilbert, a guy like Darnell Washington. By the way, Washington had some great things to say on social media the other day about his outlook for the upcoming season, like Oscar Delp, who really mentions that success of Bowers and others as a big reason why he's coming to UGA. When you have this kind of energy around the position, of course you reward the guy that's providing that for the program. And I thought that Brett Seither, when he spoke during spring practice, that's another one of the tight ends here in this Georgia roster, I thought he really kind of laid this out really well. I used the word energy a moment ago. There is just a lot of energy when it comes to Georgia at this position. Obviously, Hartley gets a lot of that credit. Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, gets some of that too. And this is what one of the players in that position, Brett Seither, said about all of that going back to the spring. This is Seither.
I think it's awesome. Our playbook is so much fun to play with, especially the passing game, and it's really tight end friendly. I think Hartley's had a good role in playing with that too. I think he's an awesome coach. I think Monken's an awesome coach too, and they like to get the ball to the tight end, so we can't complain.
I love that. And if you're watching a video, a great picture of Hartley and his guys there on the screen there, all smiles, everybody having a good time. And I think that Seither's recommendation there of Hartley really stands out, that sometimes, you've heard me say this before, thin slicing in life, you can just kind of boil something down to something pretty simple. If people are having fun, they're probably successful. And the degree to which Georgia tight ends right now are having this much fun speaks to the kind of success they're having. But also there's this. Like, this in college football is the best way to use the money, right? It's like, used to be everybody wanted to build like the nicest buildings, the biggest facilities. I'm not against that necessarily. I've just never been quite as convinced that commercial real estate was a straight line towards success, the way that some people think that it is. To me, it's really about people. Anybody who's ever run a business can tell you this, is that if you want to have a great organization, you've got to have great people in that organization. When you get good people, you got to find a way to keep them. That's really the name of the game here. So, build nice buildings, expand Sanford Stadium, give Kirby Smart a gazillion-dollar contract, but it's the coaches that work for Smart. Your ability to keep them, especially young guys who are upwardly mobile, keep them employed a little longer, keep them happy a little longer. Eventually, Todd Hartley may want to be a head coach or something like that, and he may move on to go down that path. But for now, there's no other place but Georgia for him, and the fact that Georgia is able to give him this big raise just increases the likelihood that remains the way that it is. And I think that's a really good thing to be able to see. This is how it's supposed to work. When you have success, you're supposed to be rewarded financially for that. No one can deny the success that Georgia is having at the tight end position, on the field, and in recruiting. So, of course, Hartley would get a big raise, and that's exactly how all of that has played out. All right, so that is the story there. Obviously, Hartley a part of a lot of big recruiting wins for UGA. And speaking of recruiting, man, we are on the doorstep of a lot of big recruiting news in terms of a big commitment Georgia has got. Maybe another example of Georgia holding off a player taking a visit to a UGA rival. This is interesting, too, on a couple of fronts. We'll deal with that. A lot of visitors coming in. A guy who's been all over it the entire time has been Jeff Sentel. So let's get everything from him that he knows, but all that's going on as we go on the road, assisted by AAA, with Jeff Sentel right now.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insight.
We'll say hello to Jeff Sentel on the road, assisted by AAA. Georgia obviously gets a major commitment yesterday in the form of A.J. Harris. We talked about this some on video there last night. I was a little unstable with my connection, but still happy to be able to hop on there and get a little chat going with our buddy Jeff and Connor Riley there too. And Jeff, off the top of the program, I talk a lot about, listen, for us, what's really fun is not just getting another 5-star commit, but really snatching one from the jaws of the Florida Gators. That's really fun there as well. But listen, I don't want to short sell Harris as a player. This is obviously a big addition for Georgia here on this. So if you don't mind, let's talk about Harris a little bit as a player here. It's a tall guy. That's one of the things you notice pretty quickly right away. A little bigger frame than maybe sometimes you see with some of these cornerbacks we might talk about a bit. But beyond that, what do you like about Harris as a player?
Yeah, guys, good hearty Gator tears, happy Bulldog morning, I guess. So AJ, the way I try to cover these kids is, Brandon, let's face it, like everybody Georgia recruits that has these major offers, the ones that they bring in now for official visits, where we've been saying on Hedges for a while now, we've been saying on your program for a while now, that Georgia is going to be very right out of the gate with their officials. You only get 56 allotted official visits every cycle with the recruiting class. I believe that goes from August to July 31st of the previous year. But these guys that Georgia recruits are all very good, very talented. He's a 5-star, the nation's number 5 corner. I think really you say the number 5 there. I mean, if you want to pick the top 3 corners in the country, if you have A.J. Harris's name in that list, nobody's really going to raise their eyebrows really too highly on that. I really like his background. I really like how he works. I really like how he remembers. He was actually born outside the country. His father is retired military in the Army. And so he's lived all over the world. He's got a worldly view. He understands how to work hard. He's worked with Oliver Davis, one of the OD3, one of the best cornerback trainers in the nation. Brennan, last year, here's a really quick story. Last year, he blew up. I think his first offer was from Kansas, and then he really exploded around February, March, when everybody started to see him. He was working out with NFL guys, like OD3 has a bunch of NFL guys he works with, including J.C. Horn. And I got to speak to J.C. Horn last summer when Harris was just incredible. Everybody was talking about A.J. Harris. He walked on water basically at the limited opening out in California a year ago when guys like Oscar Delp were out there. And really, J.C. Horn, first-round pick of the Carolina Panthers, who was an all-SEC cornerback, basically said, dude, if you're watching this workout with a bunch of NFL guys there, he said, you would not know that A.J. Harris is a high schooler. You would not know that he's a rising junior. You would see his body, you would see the way he works, and you would say, oh, that's another pro guy. He fits in. JC told me, this was last summer, Brandon. He told me when he gets to college, he's going to be day one ready to go, ready to play. He said that before his junior season of high school football in Alabama, that A.J. Harris was already ready to be an SEC cornerback at that time. He's only gotten better. I know there's they beat Florida out of this, but man, at one time, Brandon, it was Clemson. At one time, it was Ohio State. Georgia was always in the mix. And here's what I love about this story, besides how closely A.J. Harris walks with his faith and how he tries to put his almighty God into everything. That's what he said. Every time I talk to him, he always tries to put God first in everything here. Really raised right by great parents. But flashback to June of 2018, and Pierce Sperling III and A.J. Harris were MVPs at Kirby Smart's camps. Those things are going on all this month. I'm sure some of our listeners and viewers and audience have sent their kids, or they've heard about their neighbors, or they heard about their fellow church members or whatever that have gone to these Kirby Smart camps. Flash forward now to June of 2022. You know who the highest rated player on Georgia's commitment board right now is? For now, that's A.J. Harris. You know who's the number 2 highest rated player on that commitment board? For now, that's Pierce Sperling III. Those two guys, they dreamed about this a long time ago, and right now, they are the cornerstones of the class.
That's really something, Jeff. That's really a really cool thing to think about. One more thing on Harris that I just find fascinating is the kind of backstory here and we talked about this on yesterday's show before we knew that Harris was going to commit to Georgia on Thursday night, which was, hey, the Florida folks really trying to get him to take that visit. The official visit to Gainesville this weekend. The internet chatter is that maybe Harris was not going to do that, and I think we kind of described this as probably the most dramatic moment of the 2023 recruiting cycle thus far of, hey, was all this just a swerve and Florida really was his team, or had Georgia successfully convinced him not to go to Gainesville, something that would be very easy for me to be convinced of doing, but maybe with recruits not always the easiest thing to do. How interested are you in kind of the backstory of all of this, of not just impressing him during a visit, but convincing him not to take the other visit, in this case to the Florida Gators? I think we may have lost Jeff there. Let's see if we can get Jeff back on, get him up and running, because I think this is important stuff to be able to address, and we'll do that with Jeff here. But as you may have remembered on yesterday's show, we talked about this, that, hey, and we actually used Mr. Harris's father, and what he had said on social media about how, hey, we were very impressed by what we saw at Georgia, Florida kind of the next one up here. I think we have Jeff ready to go. So, Jeff, I'll bring you back in on this. Just the backstory of what it took to convince Harris not to take that Florida visit here this weekend.
Yeah, Brandon. So there's always a lot of intrigue on this. The things you hear, I mean, goodness, the things that a guy in my position hears that he doesn't report, I think that would be a pretty good tell-all one day down the road. Or really, you don't tell it all, because that's not the way you do things as a professional reporter. But I think one of the things there is you've heard that Florida was really in the woods deep there, really in the swamp deep there with Harris. You'd heard things like, they were trying to get him to commit, kind of be that anchor of the class, and you really get the momentum for Napier and Corey Raymond as the co-defensive coordinator rolling. I thought it was interesting. Hayes Fawcett, who everybody knows his name if you cover recruiting, that's the guy that makes the edits and the top lists and the commitment edits for thousands and thousands of players, probably hundreds and hundreds of 5-stars by now. He actually shared on his Instagram feed last night the commitment edit for A.J. Harris with Florida.
Oh, yeah.
And he said he'd been holding on to it since April. He worked so hard on it that he just had to let the world see it. And, man, I got to think that's probably what the Florida Gators recruiting staff is thinking right now, because they worked so hard on trying to get A.J. Harris to join their class, to be synonymous with Florida football, like that Jumpman logo, or, golden shoes, or I'm sure you can think of a lot more clever avatars and icons for Florida football than I can, but didn't happen. I think really what this is really, Brandon, if you want to sit there and slap a helmet sticker on somebody's helmet this morning, or an attaboy on somebody's back this morning, I think it goes to Fran Brown, because Fran Brown was the guy that Georgia brought in. Let's just say I don't think that the relationship was optimal with Georgia over the last, over the 2021 season. And Fran Brown quickly, I don't want to say, not just repaired bridges or just created new bridges and connected really well with AJ. And Brandon, I got to say it, there's so much momentum right now around this summer in Georgia football. When you learned, and this is one of the things I didn't really report for a while, when you learned that AJ Harris was coming in that first official visit weekend with a lot of guys, I think we try to cover our traces really well and just say things like, this was a weekend built with a lot of guys that were kind of leaning towards Georgia or feeling Georgia, and it was a way to kind of get a groundswell of momentum of guys that just look across the table while everybody's eating macaroni and cheese and chicken wings and going, and it looks like that dude's coming. I'm kind of thinking about coming, but that dude might come too, and that dude might come too, and that's the way Georgia was able to, right out of the gate, it's almost like Kirby Smart in Georgia is setting the curve on a lot of these recruiting rules and recruiting staples right now. They got the official visit first for a lot of guys. You see Sadir Mitchell right now is taking official visits. I think Sadir is in Texas this weekend. You see Deshaun Womack, he's at Ole Miss this weekend. And Brandon, Georgia hosted those guys 2 or 3 weeks ago, and everybody's got to try and come up to Georgia's level with how they host a recruit, not just the NFL pipeline, not just the national championship, not just beating Alabama. But Georgia always recruited very well, Brandon, and we've been looking at this kind of like your meteorologist looks ahead for the next week and tells you it's going to be 100 degrees. When Georgia, who already recruited as well as anybody in the country, they added even more impressive recruiters in Fran Brown and Brian McClendon to the stable and Chidera Uzo-Derive. They got even better at recruiting when they were already optimum at recruiting, and then they have all this periphery now of there's really no negative stigma around the University of Georgia. A lot of players in this country, Brandon, they look at Georgia, and this is the first time we could ever say this. They look at Georgia and they say, you know what? Those next 3 years or 4 years at Georgia, it might be better than those next 3 or 4 years at Alabama or anywhere else in the country. And I think that's why a lot of prospects are excited.
All right, very interesting. I want to talk about another player here for a moment that really kind of gives almost a similar vibe to the Harris story, at least if the internet chatters to be believed. Bo Hughley, who I think is a very interesting recruit in his own right because it's the classic example of a guy who's been in the class for such a long time that I think people have almost forgotten about him, forgotten how big of an ad this was for Georgia's offensive line. Important to reconsider that, I believe. But beyond that, Hughley put out on Twitter yesterday that he was going to be visiting Georgia here this weekend. I believe that's an official visit. But the context for this is there had been some online chatter as of late that maybe Auburn was making some inroads on Hughley, and there were some Auburn fans who were believing that maybe they had a chance to do something with Hughley there. How real do you think that was, and how much is this another example of Georgia preventing another visit by a recruit to a UGA rival and maybe finding a way to hold on to Hughley? Like what's actually going on here? Because there has been a little bit of chatter online about Bo last few days, even though he's been in the Georgia class since, I think September, almost coming up on a year here. But there's been a little bit of chatter about Hughley out there as of late. What's been actually going on there from your perspective?
Yeah. So let me tell you how I digested this stuff, Brandon. I start at the middle of the week trying to put together the official visitor list for every weekend. And I had an inclination that you might say that Bo Hughley was going to be back in town this weekend. And I reached out to Bo, and it was on Hedges on Wednesday night where I just said, yeah, Bo Hughley's going to be back. It's going to be an official visit. And that's a good chance for Georgia to kind of reinforce things. When reality, I don't really know how much reinforcement Georgia really needed to do. If you follow Bo Hughley for a while, like I have now for well over a year and a half, you see social media, there's always a lot of pro-dog stuff. I remember him tweeting at Arch Manning a lot, trying to add him to the class. That's the quarterback we want. I remember a few social media impressions where Hughley was really angling really hard to have Arch Manning join the 2023 Georgia class. And sure, Brandon, he's taking some official visits, but I guess we got to add, I know you love the soap, and I know you love the ivory or the dial, the soap opera type soap turned up really high on our Friday conversations. So really, this one actually involves a member of the Migos, Quavo. Everybody knows him, friend of the program, friend of the Georgia program. The guy on the sideline as Georgia wins these big bowl games in January now, big football games in January now. There was a tweet where, there was an Instagram post where Bo Hughley was putting an orange heart and a white heart on a lot of Instagram messages regarding him and Auburn. And Quavo kind of jumped in there and he says, "What's up, man? I thought you were a dog." And he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm a dog for real, for real." So it was one of those things where even Quavo had to get in the mix there and be like, are we still good here? Everything all right? And Bo Hughley, the guy that loves him some Starburst pink candies. I hope Georgia's made sure they got a lot of Starburst pinks in that hotel room for his official visit this weekend. But, Brennan, it's another really loaded class. I mean, you could make the argument that whether you're a defensive-minded guy or an offensive-minded guy, I think this weekend, the third weekend of June, could be just as important to Georgia's class as the first weekend of June, because there are a lot of heavy hitters, especially on the defensive side of the ball, coming to town this weekend.
And I want to talk about a lot of those guys here in a moment. Let me try to do a couple other things very quickly before we get there. You had some interesting comments from Anthony Evans, wide receiver at DawgNation.com, talking about some negative recruiting that he's been impacted by, or at least folks have tried to impact him with when it comes to his eventual decision. And it kind of ties into something we said yesterday, which was, hey, you got to be real about the current state of Georgia and its wide receiver recruitment. It's always going to be a hot topic for UGA fans right now. We referenced Brandon Ennis, who at one point in time seemed to be influenced by the hiring of Brian McClendon as wide receivers coach, but put out his top 6 this week. Georgia not in there. Evans talking about the kind of negative recruiting that he hears. I know Georgia's going to be hosting a handful of big-time wide receivers here this weekend, but I guess you're still sort of left to wonder, what chances does Georgia really have to kind of win those big battles at a position that it hasn't won a whole lot of those there lately? What do you make of the current state of wide receiver recruitment, with a couple of big names coming in this weekend, with what Evans told you, and the fact that a guy like Ennis, didn't even really have Georgia on his top 6?
Yeah. So it's funny. You catch a lot of points there. Let me just try and unravel the onion a little bit at a time. Number one, I think one part about, everybody wonders, is college football broken? Is college football recruiting broken? I think the one position where you're going to see a lot of NIL money influencing prospects is going to be at the wide receiver position, because there's so many. Everybody looks at those guys as those sticks of dynamite and those instant offense, to how you can sell tickets. You can really have an impressive aura around your program if you have a playmaking first round wide receiver. And that was one of the things that Georgia, simply put, Anthony Evans said his biggest takeaway from his official visit to Georgia was how Georgia debunked, slam dunked, flipped, pancaked the notion, whatever you want to call it, about how, blah, 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 Georgia wins a national championship, but you won't get developed, or, Georgia doesn't develop wide receivers. So Brian McClendon and Todd Monken hit Anthony Evans square between the eyes with a lot of facts. Not a lot of people know this, Brandon, but there's really only – Georgia has had 9 receivers picked in the NFL draft over the last 10 years. That doesn't even include Reggie Brown, doesn't include A.J. Green. There's only a handful of programs that have had more than that. There's Alabama at 10. There's also LSU at 10. And then there's Clemson and Ohio State at 11. Georgia is at 9. Other schools that seemingly get a lot more attention for offense, or, hey, we throw the ball around. Florida, I think they only had 6. FSU only had 2. Oregon only had 2. Oklahoma, the school that tries to dub itself as wide receiver U a lot of times, they even have fewer wide receivers selected in the NFL draft than Georgia. So that was the big thing Anthony Evans needed to hear. He needed to know that Georgia could get him to the league. Georgia can develop wide receivers. And he needed to know, because he hears from Brian McClendon about 5 times a week, that he's his guy, that he's one of his guys for this class. And really, Anthony Evans seems like, as fast as he is and as mercurial as he is, kind of seems like he's going. Remember Benjamin Button, Brandon? You remember that movie where the guy starts off old and then he grows young? That's kind of what the Anthony Evans recruitment feels like. He started off committed to Arkansas, then he decommitted, and then he was down to like a handful of teams. And now he's going to drop a top 10, he tells me soon. He's actually visiting Texas A&M this weekend. And, before we sit there and go, oh my gosh, these are just kids being kids, I thought what Anthony Evans said was really real and genuine. He's like, man, I'm just a 16-year-old kid. I got like 40 offers, 30 offers. I'm trying to figure all this out with all these grown men giving me all this great information and all this really good stuff in my ear. And I got to try and figure all that out. And for him, he sounds like he's still got a lot more thinking to do. He'd like to have his decision made before his senior year in September. And the reason why, he was, again, very honest, Brandon. He says, you know what? Because I'm getting tired of people texting me all the time telling me I had a good game or I had a good camp or they like this. And I have to respond to all those people all the time, kind of like being the most popular kid and the most popular person in the neighborhood, or with the text message chains and everything else like that. I thought what Anthony Evans official visit did. But it gave Georgia a chance to sit there and say, you know why we don't throw the ball, we don't have the stats that those other guys do? It's because we're winning games. And nobody's throwing the ball in the second half when you're up by 30 unless you want to lose your whistle.
All right, so let's do a couple of things here real quick before we let you go. First of all, you had a great story at DawgNation.com when it comes to the NIL stuff, and you mentioned that when it comes to wide receivers. Interesting to hear other prospects kind of weigh in on what kind of factor that is for them there at Georgia. I thought in particular some of the stuff that Justice Haynes said was, particularly telling that, for a lot of these guys right now, although obviously the money is a huge factor, and to be frank, some people don't seem to be quite so candid when they talk about the true role that NIL is playing for them. For a lot of the guys that Georgia's chasing, they still seem to be making decisions for reasons other than just the NIL, as Haynes said, basically being confident eventually that's going to take care of itself. And I think if you're a Georgia fan, you probably take some comfort from some of those kinds of words. What did you think about what Justice and others said to you in that story?
I tell you what, Brandon, there's some guys that are a muscle car type. There's some guys that are a speed car type. There's some guys that want to have a lift kit and everything going on with their truck. But I think Georgia has a type. And I think what Georgia has done is they've identified the really talented players they think can help them win more championships. But they also, that type means they feel a certain sort of way towards NIL. When I was doing that reporting, Brandon, I was putting that together over like 2 or 3 months. Every time I talked to a big recruit, I would sit there and say, tell me what you really feel about NIL. Now, I know nobody was sitting there going to tell me that, yeah, we just really want to have the dollar signs, like what Lane Kiffin said. We don't care about development. We don't care about facilities. We don't care about jerseys, even those really stinking cool all-white Georgia jerseys right now. We want the money. I didn't expect anybody to say like that Jerry Maguire line that Coach Kiffin tells the world about. But some of them were very real. And it seemed like when I mean by a type, it means like Georgia has identified the prospects at the top of its board that are not looking for NIL as an inducement to their decision, that are not looking for NIL as a deal breaker or a deal maker or as the final arbiter for their decision. Most of them, Brandon, if you saw that, I went through a lot of guys that were high on Georgia's board, that there's kind of great mutual feelings between a lot of them. And almost to a man, it sounded like what Kirby Smart was saying during the spring meetings, or what he was saying on Feinbaum recently, or what he was been saying in his media appearances lately, that, that's kind of not kind of going to be the main thing. And if it is the main thing, that's not going to be the player that Georgia's going to put together another championship roster with. And it also sounded a lot like what Kearis Jackson said at the SEC spring meetings in Destin. All of them kind of realized that if you play out, you ball up, play hard, and you blow up, then you're going to get your NIL money where you're at, and you're also going to be part of a championship program. And all that's going to come once you get to the right school. And it almost seems like there was a lot of choir members echoing what Kirby and Kearis said, especially the ones that Georgia has really targeted in the class of 2023.
We're on the road. It's just about AAA with Jeff Sentel here today. And, of course, there are many benefits to home insurance through AAA there as well. Not just roadside assistance, something that AAA has been known for a long time. But we want you to think about AAA for your home insurance there as well. One of those is claim-free reward. Now, listen to this. This is really cool. You can get cash back every policy year that you remain claim-free. You can see all the discounts that are out there for you by going to AAA.com/home insurance. That's AAA.com/home insurance. Or give them a call, 833-718-2075. That's 833-718-2075. And, of course, coverage is subject to all policy terms, conditions, exclusions, and limitations. Discounts and savings opportunities subject to eligibility requirements, subject to underwriting requirements as well. Insurance underwritten by Member Select Insurance Company or non-affiliated insurance companies. Copyright 2022. The Auto Club Group. All rights reserved. So we've kind of hinted at this, Jeff, but before we let you go, let's kind of give some final thoughts here. You got the big running back, Richard Young, coming in. You got a pair of big names out of the state of Alabama. This is a decorated list here this weekend, so give us a quick snapshot on that before we let you go.
Yeah, Brandon, and by the way, I got to tell you, your professional disclaimer voice sounds a lot better after Georgia just pulled a 5-star away from the Gators. I don't know what it is. It sounded better. Sounded on point this week.
Good to hear.
Hakeem Williams is a guy, that's the impressive wide receiver. If you're looking at Georgia's receiver recruiting this cycle, I think Hakeem Williams is a guy that can come in and give you George Pickens type production in year one. Of course, he's been getting loved up on. Let me sound like my grandmother would say that. Getting loved up on right now by Texas A&M. And this is really a stakeholder decision for Georgia. If you saw Hakeem's social media, the big black stretch SUV pulled up to his home in Fort Lauderdale earlier this morning. He's on his way to Georgia. He's probably in the air right now. That's a player that I think is really a really great instant impact, very talented wide receiver. A lot of folks think he's the number one receiver in the country, even though I think he's number 5 or 6 right now and number 40 overall. The other young man was in town last week, Tyler Williams. That's a guy that I can see. But he's barely played any football at all. He's barely been a receiver at all, yet he's 6'4", 200, right at the tippy-toes top of Georgia's board, it feels like. And, that's a guy where you look at the two Williams receivers in this class, both of them have special traits. One of them might be better for the next 2 or 3 years. One of them might be better in the NFL. That's a guy to look at. Evans was there. You also, and I got to make sure, folks, if you think about anything for this weekend, Georgia just went and took a 5-star out of Alabama, away from Auburn, away from Kirby Smart, away from all the other programs in the country. They're going to try and triple that feat, put even more plates on the bar for the heavy lifting. They got 2 5-stars from the city of Montgomery. I'm going to tell you guys this till I'm blue in the face. Kirby Smart has kind of special powers, recruiting powers in the city of Montgomery in Alabama. That's where he was born. Almost every coach and trainer in that area knows him very well. And you've got James Smith, nation's number 2 defensive tackle, number 13 overall prospect. Brennan, he's talented enough where I could say he could be a Bear Alexander. He could be a Trayvon Walker. He's that type of adaptable, versatile lineman. You should see him on the basketball court. And then they got a young man that I'm just calling a flat-out switch, crazy freak in Jaquavius Rousseau, also out of Montgomery. This young man, Brennan, he ran a track meet after a heavy squat day where he's doing 400 pounds on squats for reps. He's at a track meet. He still runs like an 11.3 in the 100. He's a bench press 400 pounds. He does 350 10 times. He's the number 4 edge in the country. He's another 5-star, another top 30 overall prospect. He's only about 6'2.5" and about 235, but it looks like somebody carved him out of granite from Mount Olympus. He's that talented. He had 16 sacks a year ago. That was even when James Smith wasn't even playing with him, soaking up blocks on the defensive line. That's when James Smith was at IMG. Really big visit, Brandon. Again, another thing that I'm gonna say it's going to happen until it doesn't happen. Those 2 young men, they want to play together. Let's not confuse folks by saying package deal. They're just friends, and they want to play together. We all know package deals means that one guy's a little bit better than the other, and the university's trying to bring in the upper echelon player, and they're going to use the lower echelon player, the lower tier player, to kind of pave the way for that. That's not what's happening here. These guys almost take all their visits together. When they're on a visit apart from each other, they will FaceTime and talk to each other during the visit. They're coming from Montgomery, Alabama this weekend. Very big visit for Georgia right there as they try to maybe beat out Alabama for that pair as well. I mean, it's another loaded, crazy weekend. You got Bo Hughley. You got Hakeem Williams. You've got another cornerback out of Miami, a 4-star corner, Denver Harris out of Miami. So it's another great weekend for Georgia recruiting. In this month of June and July, I think it is going to be a different summer for Georgia football recruiting than we've ever seen.
Boy, Jeff, that is really interesting stuff. I'm happy to have your perspective on all of that. Happy Father's Day weekend to you. Hope you get a chance to enjoy that. And we appreciate you being here on the road to It's About AAA here today. Have a great weekend. We'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Brandon, I got a shameless plug or shameful plug. My son Kyle, he turns 14 years old today.
Oh, wow.
Just want to say happy birthday to my son Kyle. And brother, you know how it is when your son's birthday is on a Friday and your Father's Day is on a Saturday. What do you think happens over there, man? What get eclipses there during that birthday weekend?
Yeah.
For a very deserving young man. I just wanted to tell everybody on the air, happy birthday to my son Kyle, who we're very proud of him, and he's 14 years old today.
That's awesome to hear, Kyle. Happy birthday to you. Hope you all have a great weekend, Jeff, and maybe you'll get a little bit of Father's Day time to enjoy in the midst of the big birthday celebration there.
Appreciate it, buddy. Have a great weekend.
Good stuff.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
So, indeed, happy birthday to Mr. Sentel's son there, and hope all of you are getting ready for a great weekend, whether you're dad enjoying Father's Day, whatever else. Stay cool and enjoy these summer weekends because this is clearly the calm before the storm, before the big season is on the way. And by the way, speaking of enjoying yourself during the summer, I can't think of a better way to enjoy myself than on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. Yes, I can take something even like a birthday wish for Jeff's son and use that as a segue for an ad read. That's just what we do around here. A great time for you to be on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. And if you haven't made your plans to do that as of yet, well, listen, you got to do that, because if you're watching a video, I mean, you see all the fun stuff there. Look at the iFly simulator, I mean, you got the bumper cars on some of these ships, Playmaker Sports Bar and Grill. I mean, this is the kind of thing that really would not have existed on a cruise ship, say, a few years ago, like the true traditional classic sports bar type thing. It's one of the specialty restaurants now, though, that you find on so many of these Royal Caribbean cruise ships. I mean, you watch sports. I mean, I remember taking cruises early 2000s, and even finding sports on a cruise ship was a difficult thing to do. Just watching TV in the middle of the Caribbean was just not an easy thing. But now it's just gotten a lot easier, and you can sit right there in the Playmaker Sports Bar and Grill and enjoy all the big sports stuff that's going on cruise ship, and have some great food while you're doing that. All kinds of really specialty restaurant options, whether it be Chops Grill, that's the signature steakhouse that's on each of the Royal Caribbean cruise ships. In some cases, you have Uzami, which is like a hibachi style restaurant. You have a lot of really cool Italian restaurants like Giovanni's Table, things like that. Just a lot of really cool specialty restaurant choices. The food options abound, of course. One of the reasons why we think you ought to check it out today, and our friends at the Cruise and Vacation Authority can help you do that. You can find them online, tcava.com. That's tcava.com. You can also give them a call, 770-952-8300. 770-952-8300. That phone number, once again. It is a great time to have a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation, and I think you'll be really happy that you did that. All right. Do you have the appetite for a little more bad news for Florida? My guess is you probably do, so let's give it to you. Fresh off the heels of losing out on five-star defensive back A.J. Harris, who, as you know, committed to Georgia yesterday. Oh, yeah, and by the way, one thing on this, just real quick before I do what I was doing. Jeff said something that I wanted to remark on, and then I'll do more of the Florida stuff after that. Interesting to hear Jeff say, and I hope you heard this, and go back and listen to it again if you missed it, that Georgia's relationship with Harris was actually not super strong prior to the hiring of Fran Brown as defensive backs coach. When Georgia hires, and let's admit it, we didn't know who Fran Brown was. I'm saying I didn't when he was hired. Obviously, you had some things in his resume that maybe you liked, but I couldn't have picked Fran Brown out of a lineup. So you're looking for evidence of, is this guy going to be a good fit? Is this guy going to be a big-time assistant in a place like Georgia? Well, the story that Jeff told, I think, is evidence that, yeah, he has a chance to actually be that, because the way that Jeff tells it, hey, listen, when Brown got here, Georgia was kind of on the outs a little bit with Harris. He'd been Clemson, as Jeff said. He had been deeply Florida as recently, all the way back to April. And Fran Brown seemingly has changed all that. So a little bit of a credit there to the new Georgia cornerbacks coach for the work that he did with A.J. Harris. But the point here is that on the heels of losing Harris to Georgia, Florida may be on the heels of losing another one there as well. Now, there is a lot of rumor and innuendo about this that is unconfirmed, but it is interesting nonetheless. What we do know for a fact is Jaden Rashada, a big-time quarterback, 4-star prospect out of Pittsburgh, California. Rashada was supposed to make his commitment decision this weekend and supposed to be at Florida there, too. This was going to be a big win, supposedly, for the Florida Gators, the class of 2023, the big-time quarterback prospect. But as Brandon Huffman from 24/7 Sports reports, Rashada is pushing back his announcement date. It's now June 26th, and he's also announcing a Final Five there, too. It's A&M, it's Florida, it's Miami, it's Ole Miss, and it's LSU. And I think this kind of comes down to probably a little bit of Texas A&M, but right now it seems to be a Florida-Miami thing. There's a lot of rumor on the internet about, maybe Miami's trying to make a big-time NIL-type offer to Rashada. It's probably also somewhat ironic that John Ruiz, the Miami booster, who's been so well connected to their NIL scene, actually met with the NCAA investigators this week. We'll let you figure out what all that might be about. But the point here is that Rashada was supposed to be, and maybe eventually will be, but was supposed to be the bedrock of the 2023 class for the Gators. They did not get a big-time quarterback last year. They're trying to get one this year, and they were hoping the guy they're going to build their class around, but he has postponed his commitment. Now, according to Rashada, that's the June 26th date's his grandmother's birthday, so as he would say it, there's a sentimental reason for doing what he's doing, but the internet kind of is treating this as Had he committed this weekend, he was probably going to commit to Florida, and therefore any kind of postponement is not good news for the Gators. In fact, Florida fans themselves are, for the most part, I think justifiably so, treating this as bad news. So if you like bad news for Florida, you got that on a couple of different fronts here today. Now, this is not recruiting for a moment, but I think this is interesting, and I meant to bring this up a couple of days ago, and I just haven't had time to as of yet. If you follow gambling at all, there's been something pretty interesting with some of these, what you call look-ahead lines, or like the sports books call them games of the year, where this time of year you'll have, Gold Nugget used to do this in Nevada. Now a lot of different places do this, both online, like say FanDuel, and some of the Nevada stuff. I think it's Circa that came out this week, where they just give you some point spreads on a lot of the games for the upcoming year. In a lot of cases, these aren't like, games they'll take really big bets on. It's kind of a low limit type thing for the most part, but it always generates a lot of chatter to these early point spread looks at some of these games. And one of the things that I noticed, the one that came out this week, which I believe is Circa, and there was another one a couple of weeks ago that's kind of the same thing. Tennessee against Alabama was a much smaller underdog initially than maybe you would be led to believe. If you care about this kind of stuff at all, when the line was posted this week, I believe it was either Circa South Point. I believe it was Circa. Those are sports books in Nevada. When the line was posted for that look-ahead game to the third Saturday in October, Tennessee was only about a 6.5 point underdog to Alabama. Now, it was almost immediately bet up to double digits, like 10.5. But this is an example of maybe gambling markets, some of the analytics-minded folks that gravitate towards gambling, admittedly, they seem to kind of like Tennessee here a little bit. Now, the public's not buying it all. As you said, as I told you, what was a 6.5 point spread immediately went to, like, say, 10.5, and there was another sports book early in the summer where the same thing kind of happened, relatively low starting line on Alabama, Tennessee that pretty quickly moved to double digits. But the fact that the books wanted to start it at a touchdown tells you a little something, maybe, that there's a little bit of analytics love. ESPN FPI, for instance, SP Plus, for instance, they also kind of like Tennessee a little bit too right now. I don't fully buy this as I don't think Tennessee's a top 10 team for the upcoming season. They may be a top 25 team. I don't believe they're a top 10 team. But this is one of those things where there have been a couple of examples recently of those folks, gambling types, who put their money where their mouth is. They've shown a little respect in the direction of Tennessee. The public has rejected that thus far, but at least wanted you to be aware of that, and we'll make that cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And kind of an awkward transition here on DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger, because I have some sad news to deliver here. This was certainly sad to me, and I know it'll be sad to you there as well if you're not already aware of this. You may know the name Kirk Warner. Warner was a tight end at Georgia going back to the late 80s, early 90s, and he has passed away. He was head coach also more recently, and this is what a lot of you also know him for, head coach there at Liberty County, which is the same school where Richard LeCount was. And very sad to see that passing for Kirk Warner. If you're watching on the screen there, you see a beautiful picture of him there at Liberty County, kind of pointing to the Georgia helmet, obviously proud of his alma mater, and also a trophy there too at Liberty County. And I didn't know Kirk personally. My understanding is he was battling cancer. He would, from time to time over the years, comment on some of our shows on YouTube, and I was always incredibly proud of that. That anytime one of the former dogs stops in to visit with us in the comments section, I'm always really happy, and I was always very happy when Kirk Warner's name would show up there. I think one of the things that I will say here, though, is that what Warner chose to do, be a football player, go through his time at UGA, and then turn around and give back to the football community here in our state. I mean, it's just one of the best uses of life I think you can possibly have, because we do truly believe that football is a change agent. It is a powerful vehicle to make young boys into good men. And when a guy like Warner goes through that football system, when he learns at the University of Georgia and takes what he learns and teaches that to the next generation, not just guys like Richard LeCount who go on to be, very well known and beloved by Georgia fans, but guys just down there in that Liberty County area, which by the way is a beautiful part of the state, guys down there that just go on to be, whatever, any other kind of walk of life, working professionally away from football, whatever they're doing. But how many men would say, hey, my football coach impacted me. My football coach was the guy that made me into what I am. And Kirk Warner, is certainly a part of a lot of those stories, was at Liberty County for a long time. And obviously a former dog there as well. I'm sure you'll hear from Richard LeCount on this at some point in time about what he meant to him. But sad anytime a former dog leaves us. And we just have a very special place in our hearts for those guys who dedicate their lives to high school football. And that's something that Kirk Warner did there as well. So to his family, we certainly send our thoughts and prayers, and we mean that sincerely. He will be missed, and wanted to take a moment to celebrate his life there today as well. Now, kind of an awkward transition back to our normal commentary, but do also want to remind you about our friends at the Finnish Long Drink as we head towards the weekend there too. Obviously enjoying time this summer and being outside and doing those kinds of things, and that's what the Finnish Long Drink is all about for you. You can check out, if you see on your screen there, one of those 8-can variety packs. That's 2 different cans of each of the 4 Finnish long drink varieties. You can find that at thelongdrink.com. In fact, you can figure out where you can pick some up. One of the things that I love to do is be out at golf courses, things like that. And I tell you, a lot of the golf courses I visit, you see that Finnish Long Drink as a part of the beverage options they have available. And when you're playing golf, man, there's nothing that goes better than a little bit of Finnish Long Drink. So check that out, thelongdrink.com. In fact, let me show you this on the screen here. Our buddy Mad Dog, who's such a prolific winner of golden shoes, he was enjoying himself some Finnish Long Drink here this weekend. Do we have Mad Dog here on this? Hanging out at the beach, enjoying a 4-day weekend, drinking a little long drink, and listening to DawgNation Daily. There at the beach, holding out the long drink cranberry can. Mad Dog having a good time doing that. We've actually got some fun stuff we're going to be coming up and doing with our friends at the Finnish Long Drink here really soon. And so Mad Dog provides you a pretty good preview of that. Happy to see him enjoying some on the beach. And hopefully you can find your way to a beach or a pool or a lake or something like that there this weekend. And as you do, in your nice ice cold cooler, make sure you pack some Finnish Long Drink to do that with you as you do. All right, so speaking of Mad Dog, who is such a frequent winner of golden shoes around here, let's give out another golden shoe here today. And obviously on this show, one of our themes today, as every day, hopefully, making fun of the Florida Gators. And listen, I always love to see parents who are raising their kids up right and making sure they're bringing them up the right way. And certainly an example of that today with today's golden shoe winner, Drew Thompson, shares this. Both of his kids there at the pool, they got the T-shirts on, Gators Eat Boogers, it says. Both those kids having a good time doing that, and it's clear that Drew's a good dad, raising his kids the right way, and you love to see them all smiles right there. A lot of happy kids at swimming pools this time of year, and we're obviously big fans of that, and you love to see the kids showing off little Gator hater credentials as they do that. Drew, that's great to see. By the way, speaking of the lousy, stinking Gators, boy, how about a long title drought for them? 4,908 days. And our Gator Hater countdown, 134 days from right now. Dogs back in Jacksonville, beating up on Florida again. Recruiting wins, a big reason why. Have a great weekend. Happy Father's Day to everyone. We'll see you back here Monday for DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. And obviously 34, a very prominent number for the Georgia Bulldogs, as we say, and on video, and welcome you into our R.S. Andrews cool down. So certainly a little extra appropriateness, if that's a word, as Georgia now 134 days away from beating Florida again. R.S. Andrews, of course, bringing the R.S. Andrews cool down to you. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric. Air conditioning on your mind right now because, my gosh, it is so hot. So go ahead and get your system tuned back up to factory fresh specs. Get it nice and cool inside your house. That tired old AC unit that somebody else may have told you is broke down and needs to be replaced. Let R.S. Andrews show you how you can breathe some new life into that unit. Get it back to factory fresh specs. They'll do that for you and only cost you $99. So check them out today, rsandrews.com, for more on that. We'll take some comments, and we got to be relatively quick today. I apologize. I've got to do something for my wife today, but we're going to have a good time anyway and get a few of these done. Then I'm going to get out of here after that. All right. I think I did YouTube first yesterday. Let me go to Facebook first here today and see what the folks are saying over there on the Facebook side of things today for an R.S. Andrews cool down. And I'll repeat myself by saying Happy Father's Day to all of you and hope you're doing great. Daniel Aldridge says life is short, enjoy every day, and love all, especially family. I think that is true, man. I just think it is. You know, I hear these stories. I will tell you, and I don't want to be too personal too frequently, but a couple of years ago, my dad passed away, and I think that I've approached every one of these kinds of stories, including the one that I told you a moment ago. I think I've approached every single one of those stories different since then. And I guess I'll probably be that way for the rest of my life. And some of you will probably say the same thing about your own lives there too, which is that you just gain a different perspective on what it means to be alive and what it means to be living and doing the work that you enjoy or being around, family and friends that you love. And you just want to get the most out of that experience. And even if you do stop to appreciate it, and even if you do feel like you're present state aware and kind of in the moment, as Kirby would say, being where your feet are, even in that, it still doesn't slow it down, right? It still just goes by so fast that even when you take time to appreciate it, that doesn't push the pause button. It is still just racing by. But, we are all left just to make the most of whatever our opportunity is. And it's doled out unevenly, and it's hard to make sense of all of that. But trying to figure out some way to make your mark and make the most of what we're given, that's our job. You're right, Daniel. I agree with you on that. Not to be too heavy, but I do agree with that. Jeff Ingram says, dogs recruiting hotter than a Scottsdale summer. That may be true, and it ain't no dry heat either. It's that hot Georgia humidity heat. That's how hot this thing is right now. That blanket of, oh my gosh, just sort of feels like you've got a ski mask on every time you walk outside just because of how humid it is. That's how hot Georgia recruiting is at the moment, for sure. Tim Tatum gives you a SB to NYC, a little bit of a reference to Stetson Bennett. I like that from Tim. That's great to see. Sandy Price says, beating the Gators at anything just feels great. Best Father's Day ever. Sandy, I'm right there with you on that, for sure. For sure. Let's get a few more over here. Phil Rogers says, can Branson Robinson block and catch passes out of the backfield? My guess is that he probably can. Let me tell you what I don't want to do is I don't want to be a linebacker coming through the hole and seeing Branson Robinson on the other side waiting to greet me. That's one of those things that make me take a basketball pretty quickly, I'm guessing. I mean, there is a certain, even if you're, obviously a big guy, there's a certain element of being a good blocker that's about want to, but my guess is that Branson Robinson's a punishing dude when it comes to some of those, would-be tacklers. Tiffany Ard, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Miriam Corbin, thanks for being here today there too. How about Michael Wilson checking in from Hawaii? He says, it's too early to be listening to BA. Yeah, so what time is it in Hawaii right now? I can't even hardly do the math on that. But we had our honeymoon in Maui. This is obviously going back a good number of years, but I was always fascinated like how much the time difference was between where we were in Maui to where things were back home, because in the summertime, Hawaii is like 5 time zones from here, right? You got Central, and by the way, our buddy Michael Carvel lived in Kauai, Michael, is that right? Yeah, Michael actually lived in Hawaii for a while. But you got Central, Mountain, Pacific, but then you've got like 2 other time zones on the other side of California to get to Hawaii. It's fascinating how far away it is. Fascinating how far away. Yeah, at 5 a.m. How about that? That's crazy. That's really something. Really something. So, Michael, thank you for checking in. Hope you're enjoying yourself there in Hawaii. I'm guessing you probably are. But thank you for checking in. Appreciate that. Let's see. Kent Holtman says, talking about Herschel Walker, comparing him to Branson Robinson, or others saying that Herschel Walker is a once-in-a-lifetime player. He says he's the best I've ever witnessed in college football, wishing Branson all the best. However, I guess there may have been a comparison to that earlier, and there's always going to be some comparison to Herschel Walker that's out there. And I do agree to an extent that Walker is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime guy, because I don't know that you can ever create the scenario that exists around Walker, because in these days and age, now we have great running backs in the sport, of course, at Georgia and other places, but defenses are always on their heels now. That in the day and age of Herschel Walker, all 11 guys on the field on defensively, all 80,000 people in the stadium knew Walker was getting the football. And the fact that he still got those yards, even though the opposing defense knew that he was getting it, I just don't think you can replicate that in modern football. I really don't, because there are wider running lanes now. There are prolific passing games that are pulling safeties back. it has just gotten a little bit easier to be a running back. And I don't say that to disrespect anybody who's running the ball in this current age that we're living in, but I just think objectively it is just easier to be a running back now. I do. I believe that Herschel Walker is the greatest college football player of all time. I think it was a travesty that he wasn't named the number one player when they made the list a couple of years ago, but I think the results speak for themselves. And, I do. Sherry Hudson Byra checks in to say, thanks for running the show throughout the year. Really make the wait time for the next season seem shorter. I really appreciate you saying that. And I do love doing this every day. If we only did this during the season, it'd be a huge loss for me because I enjoy this time of year. I enjoy the recruiting stuff. I enjoy the getting ready for the season, as I mentioned a moment ago. Even a thing involving, like, say, Alabama, Tennessee, when you see that point spread come out and you're like, wait, that's a little smaller than I think a lot of folks thought it was going to be. And then eventually it kind of gravitates back to where you thought it might be. But just stuff like that's just fun. It's just fun to talk college football all the time. All the time. Phil Rogers says 83 Auburn, Georgia, and Athens. We could not stop Bo in the Little Train. Yeah, so Little Train Lionel James is a guy that I always had a lot of respect for. I think, y'all help me if I'm right about this. He's from Dougherty County, is that right? And my high school basketball coach, when I was going to high school, also once coached at Dougherty too, and so he had known Lionel James, and obviously had, just a lot of great stories about him there as well. So I always had a lot of respect through, somebody that I knew going back to like the Little Train days. The 83 Georgia-Auburn game was a real heartbreaker. Now that's a little, like, I am not quite, like, I have a vague memory of the 83 Cotton Bowl, but really no memory of the 83 season. But if you go back and relive it, 83 season was pretty interesting. That's a post-Herschel year for Georgia. And so there was an interesting round robin that year in the fact that Auburn beat Georgia, Georgia beat Texas, and Texas beat Auburn. And a lot of Auburn folks thought they were supposed to win the national title that year. Beating Georgia, they felt like got them in the national championship discussion, but ultimately they weren't tabbed to do so. That was Miami, Nebraska instead. But they really felt like that they should have been national champions in 83, should have been given a chance to play for it. It just sort of speaks to the fact that, back, prior to the BCS, especially early 80s like that, we really had no – I mean, college football had such a nonsensical way of crowning national champions. Auburn fans, you get them started on what happened in 83. I think longtime Auburn fans are almost more angry about the 83 season than they would be about the 2004 season. But like the 83 Georgia-Auburn game has been on ESPN Classic from time to time. I've watched it on there. It's just kind of interesting to see. That was a Georgia loss, but it's still kind of interesting to go back and relive that. Like fullbacks from like a 4-point stance. The game just looks so different, and you can't quite get over how different it looked. Phil Rogers says he was there, 13-7 there that day, and it still hurts. Georgia tried and I think they actually connected on this, like a big tight end option pass that day where they threw the tight end. Coach Dooley, of course, very conservative coach, but throw to the tight end. He throws a deep pass down the field. So it's kind of an interesting game to go back and relive there. Sandy Price, thanks for the kind words for sure. I appreciate that. Let's go to YouTube here for a bit and get some folks over there. Jay Shipe says, I woke up and be ace at Dougherty. Are you an Albany guy down there in that part of the state, Jay? That's cool. That's cool. Foster Moss this is incredible. So somebody brought this up. Hey, the new Australian punter, Brett Thorson, needs a nickname. And I think we would all kind of agree that Thorson being from Australia, just kind of the novelty of that, he has a chance to be a pretty unique fan favorite. Rodrigo Blankenship's kind of been that guy a little bit too. Certainly Jake Camarda had his fans, and Thorson has a chance to be that kind of guy. And so there had been a little chatter in the comments section the last couple of days about him needing a nickname. And what I said was, you got to stay away from the obvious stuff. For instance, the play off the last name, Thor, that's kind of been taken in sports already. A lot of the Australian stuff's kind of been sort of taken too. But Foster Moss says, how about you call him the booming onion? That is hilarious. That is fantastic, Foster. I mean, I'm telling you right now, that is fantastic. Really good. Really good. Antoine Simpson says he's moving to the Albany area down there in about 3 months, or as I guess as they say it down there, Albany. Well, Antoine, that's really cool. You'll be down there in kind of enemy Florida State territory a little bit, won't you? Frank Patterson says South Carolina just offered a kid from his hometown. He wants to send him to a UGA football camp. Do you have the contact to call or email? Yeah, that's an interesting question, Frank. Let me think about that for a moment. Let me think about that. That's interesting. Croaking 123 says blooming onions are freaking delicious. I approve. Yeah, at that particular chain restaurant, my appetizer of choice for a long time was the cheese fries. Now, eventually I learned how many calories those cheese fries have, and the blooming onion ain't much better. And I stopped getting them. You know, like my issue with the cheese fries is, like, if you ever have like really like well done cheese fries where like the fries are hot and crispy and like the cheese and bacon and stuff's on top of that, man, that tastes really good. But it's also pretty easy to get very soggy, like underdone fries with the cheese and stuff on top. But my appetizer of choice at that particular chain restaurant was the cheese fries for a while. Let's see what else is going on. Adam Hicks. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard what it sounds like you've heard. It sounds like Jeff Sentel might say the opposite based on what he said a moment ago there. So I don't know. I don't know where that's coming from, but that's not the thing that I'm getting here on that. Let's see what else in the YouTube comment section. Joe asked on the subject of trying to cover all those Georgia tight ends. Yeah, I think it makes it tough for the guys on the field. I think it also makes it tough on the coaches from a schematic standpoint because, look, there is just a value to big players. Now, I'm not trying to discount the role that speed plays in football. I'm really not. But when you have big athletic players, that creates a lot of problems for defensive coaches. Like I said before, look at the way that sometimes Georgia will send like a tight end in motion and then put a running back behind that. Like that's a lot of traffic in front of a ball carrier. And when that guy that's capable blocker is also, a capable pass catcher too, just creates a lot of problems. For opposing defenses. Like at the NFL level, I don't have a problem telling you this. If you told me I could have an all-pro, not Pro Bowler, but an all-pro, I can have an all-pro wide receiver, an all-pro tight end. At the NFL level, I want the all-pro tight end. I do. There's only two of those, right? The two best. If I could have one of the two best tight ends in the NFL, I definitely would. By the way, this is a fantasy football rule there as well, that if you have a chance to take one of the two best tight ends early in a draft, you do that because, and I'm not a fantasy expert necessarily, but if you have a chance to take an elite tight end, you draft one in your fantasy draft because the list of capable wide receivers is this long, but the list of truly megawatt impact tight ends is a lot shorter. And if you give me a chance to have one of the couple of best, you better believe that I want it. And I feel pretty much the same way in college football there too. Samuel Burson says, who was our toughest game this year? To me, it's likely to be one of the three road games. It's not Tennessee, even though we talked about Tennessee a moment ago. It's one of those three true road games, either at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, or at Kentucky. I might lean on it being Kentucky. There's been some interesting chatter as of late that maybe Chris Rodriguez could be coming back. That's the good running back who's been both in trouble with the law and in trouble with his coaching staff there. Maybe he's coming back. That might be the place that I'd go. Frank Patterson mentioning something about PFF. I did not see that, but I did see the thing they had the other day about like some tight end other than Brock Bowers. Oh, nobody's better with the football in his hand than this guy. It's like sometimes I just want to shout to the media. Brock Bowers exists. I swear. I think there are a lot of people who actually don't know that Brock Bowers is a thing, and it's just amazing to me. I mean, the guy had like 8 gazillion touchdowns for Georgia, and yet all you see is like national awards being given to somebody else, and not even being like a finalist for the award. You can't even do that. It's amazing how there are still people who don't seem to know that Brock Bowers is a thing. Let us see. Anything else before we go? We got to go. Joel Moody, how about this prediction from Joel? This is a bold prediction, but it could be true. Expect 20 touchdowns this year from our tight ends. Monken knows how to coach his strengths very well. That you could very well be right. That'd be a huge number. You could very well be right. Sam Burke's also asking about the Brock Bowers injury recovery. I don't have any reason to believe that it's not going well, but we will hear from Kirby Smart in a few weeks on that. I'm sure you'll get something more specific there at the time. But no reason to believe that he's not well on his way to a full recovery. Peter Jeffrey Wilson, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Alan Verbanchik says Bowers got cheated out of his award. He did. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. He also gives you another bold prediction. He says he's got Georgia 13-0 going into the college football playoff, and I don't have to tell you what that would mean if that would be the case. So very strong prediction there from Alan. Let me go to DawgNation.com. Senior Dog 54, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Randy Hall should have mentioned this. Jamal Jarrett canceling that visit to Texas A&M. Sorry about that, Randy. I apologize for not getting that into the show today, but that's also obviously very interesting news as Georgia seemingly has made a very strong impression on a very big defensive lineman in the case of Jarrett. That is good stuff. Hemingway, thank you for the kind words there, too. I appreciate that. Randy Hall says those 4 tight end sets need to be called Air Jumbo. I like that. I like that. Let's see what else. Dogs only, thank you for the kind words. Appreciate that. Really nice. Boy, it's nice to check over here at DawgNation.com and see nice things. Bill Russell says Kirby's the SEC East undertaker for coaches. That's good. How many times does Napier have to beat Kirby over the next 5 years to keep his job? Nick Saban is the only sitting coach who has beaten. Ooh, is that true? What, is that true? Is Nick Saban the only coach active in the SEC that's beaten Kirby Smart? Boy, that's really interesting. Really interesting. That's a great stat. Great stat. Alan A. says, me talking about Florida makes him smile. Yeah, listen, we have a good time with that. Rivalries are fun. And, to have a goofy sort of, rival like Florida is even better. But that's really fun. Really fun. BA's listening face checks in to say Happy Father's Day. I appreciate that, and I always enjoy your username there as well. Alan Barry says, have you made your season predictions yet? So I'll give you 12-0 in the regular season. I'll give you a trip to the college football playoff, and I'm holding off on the others. Like, I have not really – I mean, look, there's a part of me that wants to, as what Alan said a moment ago, just to go ahead and call it that Georgia's going to beat Alabama in the SEC championship. But I want to make sure I can really make my case for that before I do. It's one of those things where it's like if I just come out and say it, people are going to think I'm just saying it because that's just what I want to be the case. That's kind of the thing that you run the risk of when you do sort of a fan-oriented show. So if I make that claim, I want to have a lot of evidence to support the point. I don't think I need much evidence to support the fact that I believe that Georgia's going to go 12-0 in the regular season. I don't think there's a very strong case to be made for anybody beating Georgia. There may not be a strong case to be made for anyone even playing it close with Georgia in the regular season. It may be that kind of deal here. So I don't think you need much, heft to make the case for 12-0, and I think a 12-0 regular season for Georgia gets it back in the college football playoff. But the big things, beating Bama, winning the SEC, winning the national championship, I'm not quite ready to go there just as of yet, although I just have this sneaking suspicion that Bama is a little overvalued right now and Georgia's a little undervalued. I do. Keith Finney says dogs are playing with house money right now. I mean, it could very well be the case that a more relaxed Georgia that has that monkey off its back, maybe that's an even better team than it's been before. Maybe you're right. Hemingway, also thank you for the Happy Father's Day stuff. And to all of you who are going to be enjoying that this weekend, I hope you have a great time with all of that. All right, I do have to go for now. Thanks for being here. Y'all check out the Atlanta Journal-Constitution online, ajc.com, for your update on everything going on with Atlanta. Obviously, the Braves sitting on that 14-game winning streak, getting ready to get back going here this weekend. So you get plenty of stuff there on that. And I mentioned this to you yesterday. Atlanta is selected as one of the host cities for the World Cup in 2026. It's going to be, across a lot of places in North America, Atlanta being one of those venues, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And I think this is really exciting. I'm not the world's biggest soccer fan. I'm not going to even pretend to be. But I definitely remember how big of a deal it was when Atlanta was announced as the host city for the Olympics. Obviously, the Olympics were in 96, but I believe the announcement came in 89. Am I remembering that correctly? I believe that's when that happened. And it was really cool. And I think it's going to be a huge deal there as well. I mean, listen, you don't have to know a ton about soccer to have an appreciation for the World Cup, and I do. So it'll be a major deal when that takes place. So good news for the city there yesterday there on that. Also a bunch going on in the Atlanta area this weekend. You can find out all about that online there as well, ajc.com. Also, big thanks to our friends at R.S. Andrews, making the R.S. Andrews cool down possible. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric. You can trust R.S. Andrews to do all of that for you. If your water heater goes out, in many cases, R.S. Andrews can replace it for you the same day. And they can get your air conditioning unit tuned back up to factory fresh specs to keep you cool all summer long there as well. So rsandrews.com for more on that. Y'all have a great weekend. Happy Father's Day. See you back here Monday for DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. We'll look forward to talking to you then.